How does the food you eat contribute to your health? Do supplements help prevent disease? For the past 25 years, the Linus Pauling Institute has served as a world-renowned research center at Oregon State University. Our mission is to promote optimal health through cutting-edge nutrition research and trusted public outreach. We use a synergistic strategy, connecting several scientific fields to bring a better understanding to dietary components and the role that they play in obtaining optimal health. We provide that information to the world, allowing people everywhere to live longer, better lives. Welcome to the Linus Pauling Institute's webinar series.
I would like to welcome everybody. Happy Linus Pauling Day. My name is Alexander Michaels. This is our Linus Pauling Day webinar on vitamin C. This webinar is always a special one for the Linus Pauling Institute because February 28th is the anniversary of Dr. Linus Carl Pauling's birthday. We call it Linus Pauling Day, a day where we can honor the life and legacy of Dr. Pauling. And I believe that there's no better way to do that with a talk about vitamin C. So before we get to our presentation and have our guest speak, I would like to invite Dr. Emily Ho to come on screen and say hello.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Linus Pauling Day webinar. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Emily Ho. I'm the director of the Linus Pauling Institute. And as Alex mentioned, Linus Pauling Day is always a day to celebrate at the Institute. Not only does it mark Linus Pauling's birthday, who would have been 122 years old, but it's really a moment that we can reflect upon our connection to the lasting Pauling legacies. We're glad we can share the day with you. So this year, we're doing things a little bit differently. We're holding our first public event since I've been the director. So it's great pleasure to see, well, hopefully I'll see, you're upstairs for me at the moment. Some people upstairs are able to join us in person here at the Institute. I'll be heading up there in a moment so I can say hello. And then after the webinar, we're hosting an open house. We'll be sharing the latest from our researchers, our staff, students, and faculty, and our outreach programs. And we also have a special guest, Mr. Chris Peterson from the OSU Libraries, to talk about Dr. Pauling and life and his career. So it's going to be really exciting. I know everyone can't make it to Corvallis. I know many of you are watching from many places around the world, but I'm glad you're here to connect with us. And I'm glad we can have an online presence as well today on Linus Pauling Day. As we have more in-person events, there'll be additional opportunities, not just in Corvallis, but hopefully closer to you, where we can meet in person and talk about our programs. So before we talk any further about that, I can go on forever. I'm going to throw it back to Alex, and we can get this webinar going.
Thanks, Emily. Today's speaker is Dr. Anitra Carr from the University of Otago Christchurch. And so I'd like to invite Anitra to turn her camera on while I do my little intro here. Hi, Anitra. You might remember Dr. Carr from our Linus Pauling Day presentation 2 years ago, where she was part of the 4-speaker panelist session that we had. And we enjoyed hearing about her work so much that we invited her back to speak solo in today's event. Dr. Carr is the director of the Nutrition in Medicine Research Group at the University of Otago. She received her PhD from the University of Otago, and then after that, she came here to the Linus Pauling Institute. She undertook an American Heart Association postdoctoral fellowship with Dr. Baltz Fry, who was director of the Institute at the time. With Dr. Fry, she produced a number of high-impact publications on the role of vitamin C and actually helped inform international dietary recommendations for vitamin C, so the new RDAs that came out. Following her return to New Zealand, Anitra began carrying out a translational research program comprising of human intervention studies, investigating the bioavailability and potential health impacts of vitamin C, including research into the prevention and treatment of acute and chronic diseases such as infection, cancer, and diabetes, all things that we're really interested here at the Institute. Anitra is considered an international key opinion leader on the role of vitamin C in human health and was recently awarded a gold medal for sustained research excellence. She is an associate editor for the journal Nutrition Research and a longtime member of the editorial boards of the journals Nutrients and Antioxidants. In fact, I just saw last week that Anitra had a special issue in Nutrients published along with our own vitamin D expert, Fritz Gumber. It's called Vitamin C and D Global and Population Health Perspectives. So I'd just like to take this opportunity to welcome Anitra, and I'll give her the stage in just a moment. But I will say that we are having a few technical issues with her presentation, so I'm going to be running it on my end, and so there may be some delays in slide advances. So I apologize for that in advance.
Thanks, Alex. It is certainly an honour to be presenting this year's Linus Pauling Day webinar. As Alex mentioned, I am Director of the Nutrition and Medicine Research Group from the University of Otago in New Zealand. However, I have had a long connection with the Institute as I did my postdoctoral fellowship with Professor Boltz-Frey when the Institute first moved to Oregon State University in the late 1990s. And that's basically when I started working with vitamin C, and I pretty much haven't stopped. So today I'm going to give a brief overview of vitamin C and its functions. And then I'll provide some evidence around the role of vitamin C in respiratory infections, and this will include COVID-19. Then I'll discuss the various factors that increase our requirements for vitamin C, such as body weight and smoking. And I'll also touch upon dosing, formulation, and safety of vitamin C. And this is a kidney, by the way. And I'll finish up with some recommendations for optimal immune health. So why do we need vitamin C? Vitamin C is normally synthesized from glucose in plants and the livers of most animals, except humans, and a handful of other animal species, some of which are shown here. And this is due to random genetic mutations that have occurred during our evolution that have resulted in a key enzyme in the biosynthetic pathway being knocked out. So what this means is that vitamin C should really be a normal liver metabolite in humans, but instead it has become a vitamin, which means it is vital for life. And so we must obtain it through our diet in order to survive. And we get it primarily from fresh fruit and vegetables. Dietary vitamin C is absorbed through our small intestines by specialized vitamin C transporters. And these help to maintain blood levels at concentrations of about 50 to 70 micromolar, which are considered adequate to saturating. The kidneys can reabsorb vitamin C before it's excreted, which helps to conserve the vitamin during times of low intake. However, because vitamin C is water soluble, any excess that the body doesn't need is excreted. This figure shows vitamin C levels in the blood relative to daily intake. You can see that doses of 100 to 200 milligrams a day will provide concentrations of about 50 to 70 micromolar in the blood, which are considered adequate to saturating. Levels below 23 micromolar are considered marginal or hypovitaminosis C, and this is where you start seeing the clinical or preclinical signs and symptoms of scurvy, such as fatigue, lethargy, and low mood. Levels below 11 micromolar are considered deficient and at risk of developing scurvy, which is a potentially fatal deficiency disease. This shows how many oranges you'd need to eat each day in order to maintain these blood levels. Some countries have a suggested dietary target or proposed intake for the reduction of chronic disease risk of 200 milligrams a day of vitamin C. This can be obtained from a diet of 5 to 7 servings of fresh fruit and vegetables a day, as long as at least one of those is a high vitamin C food. Ideally, half your plate should be fresh fruit and vegetables, and preferably not overcooked, as cooking can deplete vitamin C levels. Something we need to keep in mind is that Not all foods are created equal when it comes to their vitamin C content. So most of you are aware that citrus and kiwi fruit are high in vitamin C. However, many commonly consumed foods such as bananas and apples are actually quite low in vitamin C. So it's important to consume a variety of fruit and vegetables. And something else to remember is that most staple foods such as rice, wheat and corn contain negligible vitamin C. And also animal products such as most meat, eggs and protein also contain negligible vitamin C. So is it better to get your vitamin C from food or a tablet's okay? Is there a difference? So what we did is we supplemented a group of people with either kiwi fruit or tablets that contain the same amount of vitamin C, and then we measured their blood levels over a period of time. You can see that there's no difference in vitamin C uptake between the fruit or the tablets. However, we still do recommend obtaining your vitamin C from whole foods because of the presence of other important nutrients. But there are certain circumstances where dietary intake of the vitamin won't be sufficient, and I'll talk more about that shortly. Although blood levels of vitamin C are maintained at about 50 to 70 micromolar in healthy people, certain cells such as white blood cells and tissues like the adrenal glands accumulate much higher levels than is found in the blood. So this suggests that the vitamin has quite important functions in these cells and tissues. Vitamin C is well known to be a potent antioxidant in both blood and tissues. Oxidative stress is common in many diseases and health conditions. This occurs when there's an imbalance in the generation of reactive oxygen species and the ability of our antioxidant defense systems to neutralize these. Reactive oxygen species can react with and damage a lot of important biomolecules in our body, such as proteins, lipids, and DNA, unless they are first neutralized by an antioxidant, such as vitamin C. During this process, vitamin C is sacrificially oxidized, and this helps to protect the tissues and cells from damage and dysfunction. Vitamin has a number of other important functions in the body. It's a cofactor for a family of enzymes that have numerous regulatory and biosynthetic roles in the body. It is required for protein tertiary structure, cellular energy production, hormone and neurotransmitter synthesis, and metabolic regulation by enzymes that regulate gene transcription. And recent research is indicating a role for vitamin C in epigenetic regulation by enzymes that modify DNA and histones. And this is a very interesting area of research because it's indicating that vitamin C can potentially up and down regulate thousands of genes in the body. And because of all these varied roles of the vitamin in the body, it's important to maintain regular and adequate dietary intakes of the vitamin in order to help support these normal body functions. So what is the link between vitamin C and respiratory infection? So it turns out that severe respiratory infections such as pneumonia are a major complication of the vitamin C deficiency disease scurvy. And pneumonia is one of the most common causes of death for people with scurvy. So this indicates a strong link between vitamin C deficiency and acute respiratory infections. It was really Linus Pauling who stimulated an interest in the use of vitamin C for respiratory infections. In the early 1970s, he published a popular book called Vitamin C and the Common Cold. And you can see that not long after he published his book, there was an upsurge in clinical trials investigating vitamin C for the common cold. So what effect does vitamin C have on the common cold? A Cochrane review has summarised the studies which investigated vitamin C for preventing and treating the common cold. Quite a number of studies have shown that daily intake of at least 200 milligrams of vitamin C doesn't really decrease the risk of getting a cold in the general population. However, a handful of studies have indicated more than a 50% decrease in common cold risk if the participants are under enhanced physical stress. Numerous other studies have shown that vitamin C or just regular intake of vitamin C can decrease the severity of the symptoms and also the duration of the infection. And this was particularly apparent in children who had a nearly 20% decrease in duration of the cold in those who were consuming 1 to 2 grams a day of the vitamin. These are 2 studies that were carried out in adults who had the common cold. So administration of increasing doses of vitamin C up to 6 to 8 grams a day resulted in a dose-dependent decrease in common cold duration. This earlier study administered the vitamin C only on the first day of the common cold, so it's conceivable that if it was administered more regularly and for longer, there may be greater effects. So what about more severe respiratory infections such as pneumonia? This data is from hospitalised patients with community-acquired pneumonia, which shows significantly lower levels in the patients with pneumonia relative to healthy controls, which are shown by the green bar. This figure shows that the patients with pneumonia had a much higher proportion of hypovitaminosis C and deficiency, as indicated by the orange and red bars, relative to the healthy controls. When vitamin C is administered to patients with pneumonia, you see a significant increase in vitamin C levels in their blood and their white blood cells. And this is compared with the people who receive placebo control, where their vitamin C levels remain low for many weeks. This study also saw a trend towards a decrease in mortality of the patients who received the vitamin C. Another Cochrane review has summarised the studies which investigated vitamin C for preventing and treating pneumonia. Now, unfortunately, there have been very few studies carried out in this area. However, a few studies have shown that regular intake of vitamin C can decrease your risk of getting pneumonia. And a couple of intervention studies have shown that administration of vitamin C to people who have pneumonia can decrease the respiratory symptoms, particularly in the more severely ill patients, and also decrease the duration of hospital stay. And we've just recently completed a study in patients with pneumonia where we also saw a trend towards a decrease in duration of hospital stay in the patients who received the vitamin C. The severe infections such as pneumonia, can result in a condition known as sepsis. And sepsis is an uncontrolled inflammatory response to infection. And severe sepsis is when the organ starts shutting down and the patients require admission to the ICU. Septic shock is seriously low blood pressure, which can become unresponsive to fluid resuscitation and vasopressor drugs. And it's a major cause of death of critically ill patients with mortality rates of up to 50%. Unfortunately, vitamin C levels aren't routinely measured in the hospital setting, but we've measured vitamin C levels in patients with severe respiratory infections who were hospitalised and compared these with healthy controls. You can see that the patients with pneumonia and sepsis had vitamin C levels that were significantly lower than the community dwelling cohorts. Their levels were right at the hypovitaminosis C threshold. If those patients went on to develop severe sepsis and end up in the ICU, they had the lowest levels of all, with many being in the deficient range. So this suggests that vitamin C deficiency is a real issue in cases of severe infection. This situation is not helped by hospital food, which is very little, if any, vitamin C. So if you know anyone in hospital, instead of taking them flowers, maybe take them some kiwi fruit or oranges. During an acute lung infection, the alveoli of the lung fill up with white blood cells, which are trying to attack and kill the invading pathogens. This results in complete whiteout of the lungs on chest X-ray. But you can see that within 48 hours of IV vitamin C administration, there's a dramatic clearance of the lungs, and this patient survived. There have been a number of case studies that have reported similar findings, so dramatic clearance of the lungs following approximately 2 days of vitamin C administration. But we need proper clinical studies to confirm that these aren't just isolated cases. A number of vitamin C and sepsis trials have now been published. This is a trial from colleagues in the US called the Citrus-ALI trial, where ALI stands for acute lung injury. So in this trial, vitamin C was administered to septic patients with acute lung injury, and you can see a significant decrease in mortality in the patients who received the vitamin C relative to those who received placebo. In this trial, the vitamin C was administered only for the first 4 days, and further analysis of this data has shown that vitamin C decreased mortality by more than 80% during this treatment period. So this brings us to the elephant in the room, COVID-19, because both pneumonia and sepsis are common complications of COVID-19. So you can see that when COVID-19 was first declared a pandemic on March 11th, 2020, there was a massive spike in Google searches for vitamin C. So this suggests that many people believe that vitamin C may have immune supportive roles for COVID-19. If we look at vitamin C levels in patients with COVID-19, this study from the US showed that hospitalised patients' levels were right at the hypervitaminosis C cutoff. Half of these patients died, and you can see that their vitamin C levels were approximately half of the survivors. This more recent study from China shows that patients with COVID-19 had significantly lower vitamin C levels than healthy controls. And administration of IV vitamin C to these patients was able to restore their vitamin C levels to saturating status. In the early 2020s, the World Health Organization highlighted vitamin C as an adjunctive intervention with biologic plausibility for critical COVID. So the first trial which specifically investigated vitamin C for COVID-19 was carried out in Wuhan, China. And in this trial, you can see that the patients who received high-dose vitamin C had significantly lower mortality than those in the placebo group. And this was most apparent for the more severely ill patients. This is an oral trial carried out in the US, where vitamin C at a dose of 8 grams a day was administered to symptomatic people, which is shown by the orange line. And this was compared with people who received standard of care, which is shown by the black line. So the people who received the oral vitamin C had 50% reduction in symptoms 1.2 days earlier than the people who had standard of care. And further analysis of this data has indicated that vitamin C increased the rate of recovery by more than 70%. So I'm sure most of you are aware of the risk factors for COVID-19, which are listed here from the CDC website. It's interesting to note that many of the risk factors for vitamin C deficiency overlap with those for COVID-19. These include demographic factors such as age, race, and sex, socioeconomic factors such as deprivation, and health aspects such as pregnancy, chronic disease, body weight, and smoking. What we wanted to do was determine which of these risk factors had the most impact on vitamin C levels and requirements. This is data from nearly 3,000 people from the US National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, or NHANES. The intake versus serum concentration figure shows that intakes of about 95 milligrams a day were required to reach adequate vitamin C levels of 50 micromolar. We divided the data into males and females. We saw that males needed much higher intake of vitamin C than females in order to reach this adequate serum levels of the vitamin. And this difference corresponded to a 20% higher requirement for vitamin C for males. Now, this higher requirement is probably not related to gender as such, but more to specific demographic and lifestyle factors. For example, the males weighed, had an average weight that was higher than the females, and also more males smoked. Smoking is well known to affect vitamin C levels because of the enhanced oxidative stress that it causes. This figure shows a dose-dependent decrease in vitamin C levels with increasing number of cigarettes smoked per day. And you can see that even the people who smoked only equivalent to 1 cigarette in the previous week still had serum levels that were significantly lower than adequate. So when we divided the NHANES cohort into smokers and non-smokers and looked at the intake versus concentration curves, I saw that smokers needed significantly higher intakes of vitamin C than non-smokers to reach adequate serum concentrations of the vitamin. And this difference corresponded to a 2-fold higher requirement for vitamin C in smokers. And these people aren't necessarily heavy smokers, as the average number of cigarettes smoked per day was less than 10. Body weight also affects vitamin C levels, as you can see from this figure where there's decreasing vitamin C levels with increasing body weight. And it's interesting to note that it was predominantly the people who weighed 60 kilograms or less that were able to reach the adequate serum concentrations of 50 micromolar. When we divided the NHANES cohort into 3 weight categories, we saw that and looked at the dose concentration curves, we saw that the heavier group needed much more vitamin C than the lighter group in order to achieve adequate serum levels of the vitamin. And once again, this corresponded to a 2-fold higher requirement for vitamin C for heavier people. The medium weight group, which weighed about 80 kilograms, gave values in between these 2 curves. So what about the impact on requirements of chronic conditions such as diabetes? So we've looked at vitamin C levels in people with pre-diabetes and type 2 diabetes, and compared these with healthy controls with normal glucose tolerance. You can see that the people with pre-diabetes and diabetes had a much higher proportion of inadequate, marginal and deficient vitamin C levels relative to the healthy controls shown in this first bar. Now, the lower vitamin C levels in the people with pre-diabetes and diabetes weren't due to them having lower dietary intakes of the vitamin, because you can see from this figure that these people had comparable, if not better, dietary intakes than the healthy controls. So this suggests that diabetes causes higher requirements of vitamin C in people. And this premise is confirmed by the dose concentration curves, which showed that people with diabetes had a 1.4-fold higher requirement for vitamin C than the people without diabetes. And it should be noted that the people with diabetes were heavier than the other group, and so this is likely contributing to their additional vitamin C requirements. And both diabetes and higher body weight are associated with inflammation and oxidative stress, which will further increase requirements for vitamin C. And what about requirements in people with more severe or acute conditions such as sepsis? So when a critically ill patient is in the intensive care unit, they are generally sedated because they're often being mechanically ventilated. And so what this means is they can't eat. And so liquid nutrition is provided to them by a couple of different methods. The most common method is to drip feed it directly into the stomach through a nasogastric tube. And the other method is to inject it directly into the bloodstream through a central port. Both of these methods will provide vitamin C levels of about 100 to 250 milligrams a day. So what we did was to estimate how much vitamin C the patient's blood levels should be based on how much they were getting in their liquid nutrition. And this is shown by the green bar. And then we compared this with what we actually measured in their blood, which is shown by the orange bar. So you can see their vitamin C levels are nowhere near where they should be, despite receiving recommended intakes. And so this suggests that critically ill patients need much more vitamin C than is provided in their liquid nutrition. So the concept that critically ill patients have higher requirements for vitamin C is not new. In this study from 2003, increasing doses of vitamin C were added to the liquid nutrition of critically ill patients. You can see that a dose of 300 milligrams a day, which would normally be more than enough to saturate the plasma of a healthy person, did not change their levels at all. Instead, they needed 10 times this amount, or 3 grams a day, in order to saturate their blood levels. This is equivalent to 40 oranges a day, and this is why it is usually administered intravenously to these patients. This brings me to optimal dosing and formulation of vitamin C. So this figure shows what happens in the blood of a healthy person after they consume vitamin C. So about 2 to 3 hours after consuming the vitamin, you can see a peak in the blood, which comes back down to baseline levels due to clearance by the kidneys. So what this means is if you want to maintain high levels of the vitamin, you should ideally consume it several times throughout the day. This figure shows the differences in blood levels between oral and intravenous administration of the vitamin. So oral administration of about 1 gram a day will give this small blip in the blood, whereas administration of the same amount intravenously provides this large peak in the blood. And this is because it's bypassing the regulated intestinal uptake of the vitamin. These high peaks may help with penetration of the vitamin into inflamed and hypoxic tissues, which are observed in sepsis and tumours. However, you can see this peak is still quite transient due to rapid clearance of the excess vitamin by the kidneys. But one of the few times that it's not safe to take high-dose intravenous vitamin C is if your kidneys are failing, because they won't be able to clear these high doses of the vitamin. Similar trends are seen with liposomal vitamin C, which comprises vitamin C encapsulated in lipid particles. You see a 2 to 3-fold higher initial peak, possibly due to a different uptake mechanism that doesn't involve the vitamin C transporters. But this peak does still come back down to baseline levels over the day, suggesting renal clearance. What about safety of vitamin C supplementation? Oral vitamin C is safe. Because it's water soluble, any excess not needed by the body is excreted by the kidneys. And because of the regulated uptake by the intestinal vitamin C transporters, only doses less than 500 milligrams a day are fully absorbed. So this means you can't really overdose on oral vitamin C. As for oxalate kidney stones and renal failure, vitamin C can be converted to oxalate, but it requires multiple oxidation steps. And this reaction does not occur very readily in the body, as there are multiple mechanisms for converting oxidized vitamin C back to its reduced state, and this thereby prevents it from further degrading to oxalate. However, some people do have a genetic predisposition, which may increase their risk of forming oxalate stones. But there are also numerous other contributing factors, such as dehydration, high dietary oxalate intake, etc. But as I mentioned earlier, high IV doses in the presence of renal failure may result in oxalate kidney damage because of the inability of the failing kidneys to clear the high doses of vitamin. And this is why kidney function is often tested prior to administration of high-dose intravenous vitamin C. So how much vitamin C should we consume for optimal immune health? So the simple answer is that our doses depend on the progression of the disease. So low doses of vitamin C taken regularly or prophylactically may help to prevent or minimise the duration and severity of infections. If a person does come down with a respiratory infection, early administration of supplemental vitamin C may help decrease the duration of the infection and potentially prevent it from progressing onto a more severe condition such as pneumonia or sepsis. If the respiratory infection does become so severe that it requires hospitalisation, then much higher doses of vitamin C will be required in order to help mitigate the symptoms and potentially improve outcomes. In the most severe cases, intravenous administration will be required. So in summary, it is clear that our vitamin C requirements increase as the severity of the illness increases. So healthy people should be able to obtain their optimal vitamin C intake through their daily diet, as long as at least half of each plate is fresh fruit and vegetables, and at least one of those is a high vitamin C food. Individuals who have a poor diet or who are ill will likely need supplemental vitamin C, and the type of supplement doesn't really matter. They generally give fairly comparable doses in the body. Hospitalised people and those in the ICU will need much higher doses of the vitamin C, and often intravenously. And this is due to the significantly enhanced requirements for the vitamin in these people. However, the great thing about vitamin C is it's safe and readily available. So, thank you. I have read through all the the hundreds of questions that were sent ahead of the webinar, and hopefully I've been able to address most of those questions with this seminar. But if you have any further questions or would like any more clarification about any of the points, please let us know. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you, Anitra, for that presentation. I'm trying to close up the presentation on my end. There's a lot of things in there that I could go into further, but I'm going to quickly mention to everyone who, if you don't know, we are monitoring the Q&A tab in Zoom for questions for Anitra. So if you do have a question, just go ahead and type it in the Q&A section. As Anitra mentioned, that we do have lots of questions that were submitted before the webinar began, and we're going to go into a mixture of both the questions we got before and these questions you're submitting now. But as you start to write your questions, I should also mention that the Linus Pauling Institute is not a medical institution. So I will not be asking or delving into any questions about specific medical issues that you might have. We can answer general questions about diseases and the applications of vitamin C, for instance, and some of the research behind it. And because of the overwhelming response to our previous webinars about vitamin C, we created a document called 100 Questions About Vitamin C that actually addresses many of the queries that were sent in to us today. So I apologize in advance if we don't cover those all those questions again, but I will send out a link to that document to everyone who registered today. And if you need another copy or you're watching this later on YouTube, certainly send us an email at lpi@oregonstate.edu, and we'll get you a copy. So that said, let's start. I think the first question that comes to my mind, and a couple of people have also asked this in the Q&A, is the Linus Pauling recommended larger doses of vitamin C, even for daily use, not just for the treatment of the common cold. But our recommendations, especially based on plasma levels, are much, much lower than that. Where do you see what's the discrepancy? Why do we? Is it okay to take these large doses of vitamin C?
I think the discrepancy might be looking at healthy humans versus humans who have health issues or who may smoke or have higher body weight. So in a perfectly healthy person of the optimal body weight, healthy dietary intakes, intakes that you can get through the diet should be sufficient to keep their plasma levels up at that good optimal range. But any sort of, if you're under stress or overweight or smoke or have a chronic condition or an acute condition, that will increase your requirements, and your body will synthesize more of these transporters in your intestine so that you can take up more vitamin. So some of the early studies clinical studies have shown that people with pneumonia can take up to 100 grams of vitamin C without getting intestinal effects, presumably because they're absorbing a lot more of it and it's not passing through their intestines. So higher doses are safe even in healthy people. Your body will take what it needs and excrete the rest. And the body knows what it's doing, and it will regulate the vitamin C transporters to take up more if more is needed. So it's always better to provide too much than not enough. I myself take 500 milligrams morning and night. So I'm taking it a couple of times a day, getting a gram over that day. Just prophylactically, I just do that all the time. I don't get colds or respiratory infections. So, hopefully it's doing something.
And I should mention that the Linus Pauling Institute's recommendation for vitamin C intake, is 400 milligrams per day. And the reason is because as Anitra went into, 200 milligrams is the standard recommendation by a lot of agencies or groups throughout the world. But because of the uncertainties on our individual needs and requirements that Anitra also talked about, we feel 400 is a safer dose, especially since it doesn't seem to cause any negative side effects to go up from 200 to 400. And you still could obtain that through the diet, but diet and maybe a mixture of supplementation like a multivitamin could get you to that goal.
And often vitamin C supplements aren't available at doses lower than 500 milligrams anyway. So, that's often the lowest dose you can take.
That's an excellent point. Yeah, it's really hard. In fact, it's becoming increasingly harder to find vitamin C supplements below 500 milligrams. So you focused on plasma vitamin C levels, which typically we all do when we're talking about as vitamin C researchers do when we're talking about saturating and deficiency. Is there possibility that taking extra vitamin C could have effects that maybe in the digestive tract that aren't being reflected in the plasma levels?
Possibly. I'm not familiar with any research around that.
I think it's kind of an unknown question.
High doses have been shown to protect against oxidative damage and nitrosative type damage, potentially protect against gastric cancer if you're eating a lot of processed meats and things like that. But there's not a lot of literature around that area as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, certainly. It's kind of a space where there hasn't been a lot of work done. So when we're looking at the studies, say the study that you showed on COVID, where patients were receiving 8 grams of vitamin C per day, what do you think is going on there that say a normal dietary intake wouldn't suffice? Is that just the increased burden of oxidative stress in those patients?
Well, it's not. Vitamin C has numerous roles within immune support and immune function. I didn't go into those various roles. It has a lot of functions that help with white blood cells, help the white blood cells migrate to sites of infection and grab and kill those bacteria, and then helps with clearance of those spent cells from the site of infection, which helps with resolution of inflammation. So it's not, when someone comes down with a respiratory infection, it's not just a demand on the antioxidant properties of vitamin C, but also its other cofactor functions that it has within the body. The epigenetic function, the gene transcription and epigenetic functions as well are all really important for white blood cell function as well. And also it's involved in collagen synthesis, which helps with wound healing. So if you've got an infected wound, for example, additional vitamin C helps clear the infection and help heal the wound up as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it has multiple functions, which is why you need a lot more when you come down with an infection.
So switching gears a little bit, so I guess we can talk about like different ways of administering vitamin C. Well, you mentioned intravenous vitamin C. And so I think a lot of people are interested in intravenous vitamin C, but I don't think they always understand when they should be seeking intravenous versus not, or is it something you would do on a daily, weekly basis, or is it just special case scenarios?
It really depends on the severity of your illness. So if you have severe sepsis or are in the intensive care unit, for example, that's when you'll need the intravenous doses because your body's just too ill to take it up through the intestines, and your requirements are significantly enhanced because of all the oxidative stress and other functions that are requiring vitamin C, like the white blood cells and such like. So intravenous is generally administered in hospital settings. I haven't talked at all about cancer because I believe that was spoken about at the Linus Pauling Day webinar last year. Yeah. But patients with solid tumours will have intravenous vitamin C, which may help with penetration of that vitamin C into the core of the tumour and help get the vitamin C in to carry out its important cofactor functions that might help with the decrease the severity and the progression of the disease. But that's still an area that's being currently researched at the moment. And in the intensive care unit, I didn't mention this either. The intravenous vitamin C, can be administered continuously, but it is often administered several times, 3 or 4 times throughout the day. So they don't just get one hit, they get several hits throughout the day. With oncology patients who having high dose intravenous vitamin C, they often get it 2 to 3 times a week is about the average administration. But healthy people don't need, intravenous.
Yeah, so I think that's where I was going to go with next, was because I think a lot of healthy people are seeking out intravenous vitamin C, and there are vitamin clinics that exist, where people do get these. I know of at least one, probably many more in Portland area that just deliver it to otherwise healthy adults. It could get your vitamin C levels up, but there's no.
It's no added benefit, really.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So you mentioned liposomal. So a lot of people are interested in formulations. And so we don't talk about brands very often when we're giving our recommendations, but we do talk about supplemental forms. Is there a distinct advantage to liposomal over other supplemental forms? Or do you think if you've just got ascorbic acid sitting at home, are you okay with that?
Yeah, for a healthy person, the body is really good at recognizing vitamin C, regardless of what form it's in. Vitamin C is vitamin C, whether it's from a food or from a supplement. The body will take it up and take up what it needs. If you're not a healthy person, then taking liposomal vitamin C might get your levels up faster, potentially, because it looks like, you do get slightly higher levels into the body. So that would be the only benefit I see from liposomal. I don't think it'll get levels up. It won't get levels up beyond saturating because that's where the kidneys just start clearing the vitamin, and you can't really get levels higher than that. So I think its benefit might be in the speed of getting people who have low initial vitamin C levels, getting them up faster.
There was a question actually about time-release formulations. Do you think those have any benefit?
Potentially, I'm not sure. It would depend on how long that time-release window is, because those intestinal transporters can only take up a certain amount of vitamin C at a particular time. So maybe if you are releasing it a bit more slowly, you might get slightly more in.
Okay.
But it's just, it's just as easy to take at morning and night, and maybe at lunchtime as well if you want.
Yeah, and it's probably cheaper too. I think one of the things a lot of people ask about also is adverse effects. You talked about oxalate production. So people who are definitely sensitive to oxalate should take some caution. Some people are sensitive to oxalate in food sources, so they probably already know that they're sensitive to oxalate. And anyone, of course, who's had a calcium oxalate kidney stone should take some care. What about other side effects? Are there? I mean, you said it's generally safe, but we do know, some people will get some gastrointestinal side effects, to say it politely. They take too much vitamin C at once.
Yeah, that has. So that's for doses that are greater than 4 grams a day can cause intestinal upset in some people. And that's just due to the unabsorbed vitamin C passing through your intestines. But if there's a sick person taking 4 grams of vitamin C, they will probably absorb more of it, so less of it will get through to the intestine, so less likely to get intestinal effects.
So I mean, they're typically short-term, transient, as it flushes through the system, so to speak.
Right. Yeah, it's not life-threatening.
So I think I'm going to have to just get to one more question, because we are actually running out of time, and I'm sorry for all the technical issues today's webinar, and so we'll try to get through some of the other questions through other means. But do you have any? Aging was not really part of all the factors that you were talking about when it came to determining vitamin C levels. Do you have any comment on how age influences how much vitamin C we should get, or how much vitamin C is in our bloodstream?
Yeah, we actually have looked at the effect of aging using that NHANES cohort. Mm-hmm. So we divided the data into younger people and older people, and there wasn't much difference in the younger and older people if they were taking intakes above 75 milligrams a day. But people taking intakes less than 75 milligrams a day, we saw a lower response in the older people to the intake. Their plasma levels didn't get up to the same levels as the younger people. So I think the recommendation for older people is definitely make sure you're getting more than 75 milligrams a day in your diet. And it was interesting because when we actually looked at the middle-aged group, they had higher requirements for the vitamin than both the younger and the older age group. So, a
kind of a little bit of an aside, but do you think that there may be a little bit of a Pauling effect in some of the older adults who remember Pauling's recommendations, and therefore they're really good at keeping their vitamin C levels up? Well, I unfortunately we are out of time, and we're actually a little over time. So I know you guys are still typing questions in the Q&A, and we are going to have this recording available as soon as we can. And we are going to collect all the questions that you have typed in, and we're going to try to get to as many as possible. I'd like to take this moment to thank Anitra for coming out, and thank you for that wonderful presentation.
It's been my pleasure.
Okay, so I would like to bring Emily back on and to just close us out for today.
Thank you. That was such a great presentation, Anitra. Thanks so much for offering your time, your talent, your expertise. I hope everyone felt they learned something new about vitamin C. Just want to note, these events are only possible because of the generous support of our donors to the Linus Pauling Institute. So if you appreciate these types of events, please consider supporting the Institute. Any amount that you give will help us bring more of these webinars, resources to you in the future. If you'd like to consider giving a gift, we'll place a link in the chat, and we'll also make it available at the end of the presentation, or maybe you see it right here. And it's also on our website as well. So we're already thinking about our next webinars. As we mentioned earlier, Chris Peterson from the OSU Libraries has a brand new book called Visions of Pauling. I'm not going to talk about it too much, but stay tuned. It's an amazing collection of stories about Dr. Pauling that you will not find anywhere else. We will have an interview with Chris that Alex has done showing up on our YouTube soon. And again, stay tuned for a more full-length webinar that will come up in April, where Chris will be here and talk about the book. So if you're interested in the book, send us an email. We can get you more information about it. But for now, once you see the registration, consider registering and find out more yourself. So with that, on behalf of everyone at the Linus Pauling Institute, we'd like to send you a big thank you. Those of you who are here virtually, for those of you who are upstairs in person, thank you for celebrating Linus Pauling Day with us. We have more celebrations planned as well if you're here at the Institute, but I hope to see all of you again soon.
Happy Linus Pauling Day, everyone. And as Emily said, we have more, we're having our open house starting pretty much in just a moment. So we'll catch you all later. Thank you. Bye.
Happy not Valentine's Day. Happy Linus Pauling Day. Bye-bye.